Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna go Hallelujah now.
What time are you back? 10:13. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started, and if more people want to come in, that's great. So my name is Kimby. I know some of you. I grew up in this church, so I'm around, and we're talking today about race, privilege, and children. So to give you a little background on my experience with that, in undergrad I did my degree in sociology with a focus in race relations and cultural reconciliation, and then took a brief stint of time to work with adults with developmental disabilities, and then went back to school to do a master's in marriage and family therapy, and then took a hiatus from therapy to work in ministry for 6 years, and now I'm back doing my doctorate work in child psychology. So the issues of race and privilege have always been at the very heart of who I've been in my career. However, what brings me to the table today is the fact that I'm the mother of a beautiful black boy who you just saw introduce us today, and probably see running around the church, as apparently I terrorized the halls as a child too in this church. But no matter how aware I felt like I was and how mindful I felt like I was of issues of race and privilege, raising a black child in America today is a whole different experience, and has caused me to have to view the world in a way beyond how I ever have before. So what I've learned in school and what I've done is all relevant and it's important, but really my experience as a person is what qualifies me to be up here, and I think qualifies all of us to be a part of the conversation that we need to continue having. So I'm going to throw it over to my friend Lauren, and she'll give you a little information about herself, and then I'm going to ask her some questions.
Hi, I'm Lauren. I've known Kimby for just over 2 years now. I had the privilege of our kids going to preschool together. I grew up actually in Ohio, in a small town, and then I moved to Wisconsin during my high school years. Then I went to college here also, and currently I am the sales manager at one of our local jewelry stores. I'm the mother of 2 wonderful young boys. Here we are.
So one of the reasons I asked Lauren to be a part of this conversation is because it's a conversation that we have. I'm not sure there's been a time that we've gotten together or have been in the company of each other where race or privilege don't enter into our conversation. And one of the things that I hope we leave here with today by the end of our time is the ability and openness to have those sorts of conversations with everybody in our lives. Because just like, does anybody here meditate? Like centering prayer, okay. So for those of you who, I practice centering prayer, and when I first sat down to do that, I remember thinking, okay, I should be able to figure this out. I'm a hard worker, I can do this, and I sat down once and I tried to do a 20-minute sit. I got 2 minutes in and I was like, holy cow, how long has it been? It's gotta be like 15 minutes by now. And it was really hard. And now I can do 20-minute sits multiple times a day because I practice it. Meditation is a practice. We have to continue to show up to it. It's not something we just learn and do one time. Conversations about race and mindfulness about privilege are the same way. We get more and more comfortable with them as we continue to have them. So this friendship that I have with Lauren is a blessing in my life because she's someone that I can be vulnerable with my experiences and learn from her experiences. So in light of your experiences, Lauren, I would love for you to share with us a little about how you experienced racism and segregation as a child.
When I was in elementary school, I would say that was probably the first time that I experienced something like that. And I probably was just naive and not even aware of what was happening at the time. I would say I was in 2nd grade, and we did weekly spelling tests. And so I noticed the teacher would always walk behind me when we were doing the test, but I just thought, she's just walking around the classroom to make sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. Well, after weeks and weeks of this going on, I finally said something to my mother, and she said something to the teacher, and she said, well, it's because she keeps getting A+, and I don't understand how. And so You know, that was probably my first experience. She just couldn't grasp the fact as to why I was the best speller in the second grade class. And then, you know, and just so on and so forth. Yeah, the elementary school I attended was predominantly white children, and I was the minority there in more ways than one. And so it was just things like that where they would, you know, we had a lesson on Martin Luther King, and I remember one of the girls telling me, oh, can you please turn around so I can see what color your lips are? Because I want to make the picture look like how it's supposed to. But everybody's lips don't look the same. And just things like that, or if we had a lesson on our culture and where we came from, and people automatically assume, oh, well, you should do yours on Africa. And I'm like, but my dad's from Cleveland. I don't know. You know, I'm like, I don't know where we came from. Ohio, that's where we came from. And so, you know, it was just always like things like that I remember growing up that happened on a regular basis that I just accepted and learned to deal with. I just felt like it was normal.
So I'm going to put you on the spot, Lauren, like all of what today is, but there was a story you shared with me recently about dolls when you were a kid. Will you share that story too? Because this one was like, okay, and totally connected to my son's experience today.
So growing up, I was a total Barbie doll fan, and so I had a ton of Barbie dolls, the convertible, the dream house, you name it, I had. So, and I had so many that I had grouped them into families. And I remember my mom and dad asking me, well, why are you playing with them like this? And I'm like, well, because they're the better ones. Like, I had my white family, and they were the ones that I always put the better clothes on them. I remember I had like distinguished that the mom was the teacher, and the dad had I don't remember, like he was a rocket scientist or something like that. I had distinguished that, and you know, my parents pointed it out to me. They're like, well, why can't your black family be that? Why aren't you putting those good clothes on them? And I believe it was because in my mind I felt like they were the better ones, and that's how it should have been.
Right. So we know as Christians, and as many of us have had these conversations and recognize this, that may not be our heart. I mean, that's certainly not my heart. I'm like, well, but Lauren, or the same conversations I have with my son still today are, well, but Elijah, you're worth so much more than that. Don't you know that you're the same as white people? You're just as good as. But the message he receives as a child in this world is not that. And that's the message Lauren received as well. And I'll talk a little bit about why we receive some of those messages. But first I'm going to share a video with us. And some of you may have seen this commercial recently. It was played in the show Blackish as well. But it's a great depiction of the types of conversations that people raising children of color need to have with their children. So I'm going to play this for you.
Who said that?
The lady at the store.
That is not a compliment.
Listen, it's an ugly, nasty word, and you are going to hear it. Nothing I can do about that. But you are not going to let that word hurt you. You hear me?
There are some people who think you don't deserve the same privileges just because of what you look like. It's not fair. It's not.
Remember, you can do anything they can. The difference is you gotta work twice as hard and be twice as smart.
Come straight home after practice. You got your ID? Alright. Kiss and stuff you. How's your review?
We're good.
You good?
Yeah,
You see?
we're good.
Okay. Good. Now, when you get pulled over,
I'm a good driver. Okay?
baby,
Don't worry.
this is not about you getting a ticket. This is about you not coming home.
I'm gonna be okay. Right? Okay. It's not fair. But you keep showing up.
You
You are not pretty for a black girl. You are beautiful, period. Okay? Don't ever forget that.
So I think it's easy for me at times to look at that and say, wow, that's really powerful, it's moving, and then sort of step away from it and think, okay, well, yeah, that's hard, and I connect with it for a second, and then I re-embrace my world, and I think that's the privilege that those of us who are white have. Except for now I have a son who's black, and this is his life every single day. So I'll give you an example of that. Elijah, do you want to tell them about this game? What's wrong with this game? You want me to tell them? I'm going to tell them. Tell them quickly and I can answer the thing.
Because it's only white people. Don't just scary.
That's right. Thanks, Elijah. So we got this game for Christmas, and I was really excited about it because it teaches us like the months of the year and the seasons. And we opened the game up, and we're setting up all the people. And I'll put this game over there so you guys can see it, if you want to hold it up or pass it around. So we're setting up all of these people, and right away I notice all the people in the game are white. And as a person who is white, who grew up in an all-white family, it's probably something we don't think a whole lot about because I am not othered. I have not been placed in the category that Lauren has talked about, which is being like the token minority in a group of people, or looking around a room and realizing one of these is not the same as the other as we sit in a room. As a white person, I don't ever really do that. I have to be intentional about looking at the people around me and saying, what does this environment look like? Does this environment look like the diversity in our city? Does this environment look like God's family? And oftentimes, it doesn't. Even at coffee shops I'm sitting in or restaurants I'm going to, oftentimes it's all white. And unless I actually take a look around and say, what does the environment around me look like? I don't have to be mindful about it. Lauren, you can speak for yourself. That's not a conscious thing that you have to look around at, right? You're aware of it?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that, or maybe the coffee shop experience we had?
Oh yeah, definitely. Over in Middleton at the Prairie Cafe, we actually used to live. We actually used to live on Frank Lloyd Wright, so our mailboxes were actually located inside of the cafe, and it was just an everyday experience for me that I would go in there and I would almost somewhat feel intimidated because I know I was going to get stared at or looked at or questioned, and a couple of times it was just like, oh, well, you must be the nanny, right? And then, no, actually we live across the street. So it was just really an eye-opening experience that even in my old age now that's still taking place.
So what happens for a child when they see that, from a child development standpoint, is they start to internalize senses of worth and senses of belonging and sense of esteem, all connected to that. So when Elijah walks into a place and he's the only black person in there, he starts to wonder, well, why isn't anybody else like me in here? Am I not good enough to be in here? So his exact comments on that game that we opened up, well, first we opened it up, and I said, oh my, I think there's something wrong with this game. And Penelope said right away, yeah, it's so boring. Everybody's white. And Elijah started talking about it, and I said, well, why do you guys think that is? Why do you think the game's only got white people in it? And Elijah's response was, because white people are better. And that is not a sentiment that we practice in our home. That is not a sentiment, I mean, I spend every day of my life reading books, telling stories, opening a space for conversation about race and privilege and Elijah's beauty as he is, as God created him. But the message he receives in our society is that white people are better, and he's for it. Another example of that is, what Lauren shared earlier about the dolls. Her parents didn't tell her, well, the white people should have the good jobs. The white people should have all the money. The white people should be able to go to the fancy restaurants. But the black people, they're not as important. That's not something she learned in her home. That's something she learned in our daily interactions as she entered into the world as a young child, trying to compartmentalize things in the way that we do from a child development standpoint. So children will never, from a psychological perspective, children will never stop clumping things and organizing things. If any of you have children or grandchildren that you've been around in the age of 0 to 5, you see them sort of like organize their red blocks together and organize their blue blocks together. If you're my highly organized daughter, then you're doing like multifaceted organizing, where it's, well, we've got red, then biggest to smallest, and then we've got 3-prong to 2-prong, and then that's sort of the way she approaches it, whereas my son and I are like, here are all the blocks. We're not as detail-oriented as my husband and daughter, but children learn through categorizing in that way. That's what's happening developmentally for them. The challenge or the problem with race and privilege comes in when we as adults aren't aware of the ways that we are staying within our categories and not open to crossing over. So another example of the types of conversations we need to have with our children, or the ways that a 4-year-old is categorizing the world around him, is when we watch professional football. So Elijah and I will watch Packer games. He loves football, great football player. And he turned to me a year ago when he was 3, and he said, Mama, why is it that all the people on the field are black and all the people in the stands are white? And that's a question that I've never had to think about. I've been watching Packer games since I was 3, and I've never had to think about it because I have the privilege of being white. It doesn't mean I shouldn't think about it. I should think about it. But I've had the privilege where I haven't had to think about it. I haven't had to feel other. So Lauren, if there are any other experiences you want to share about conversations with Mateus or Xavier.
I've also had to have, just recently, even several conversations with both of my children, especially my 7-year-old. They go to a private school, and so they are the only black children there. And I feel like my 7-year-old, bless his heart, but he just is like in a fantasy world, so to speak. Like I tell him all the time, like, I think that Disney World is it, like it's real life. And I'm like, that's just some place you go to have fun. But that's his reality. That everyone is nice, everyone is his friend. We're all just gonna have fun and hold hands and hug all the time. And it really breaks his heart. He doesn't understand why don't they want to hug me? Even his teacher, I had to have a conversation with her. I'm like, he's a hugger. That's what he likes to do. And she's like, well, I'm trying to teach him that he needs to respect boundaries. He needs to respect personal space. And I'm like, that's fine. I understand that he does need to respect boundaries. So I'm like, but I don't think it's bad for him to want to hug. This is him expressing himself, and he just really doesn't understand it. And I tell him, all the time, I'm like, just because your friends are doing something, that doesn't mean you should do it too. And he's like, well, why not? I'm like, because it's different. And he's like, well, why is it different? I'm like, well, because you're black. And then he looks at me and he's like, well, I'm not black. I'm brown. Yeah, it is true. You are brown. But, I just try to really, like you said, it's a constant conversation and different things come up. And I just want him, to be aware of that and be aware of his surroundings, especially at the school that he goes to, because he is the only one. And whether we like to admit it or not, things are different for him, and they're going to continue to be different for him. He continues to go to that school all the way till 8th grade. So.
That's a perfect tie-in to the other video we wanted to show you. This is one that one of the teachers of our children actually sent us, and has been tremendously powerful and has brought tears to both of our eyes because it so resonates the types of experiences we have with our children. For example, whenever we're driving, Elijah calls me out and he says, Mama, where's your wallet? You gotta put your wallet up high so the officer can see it. And it's true, because for a black man or a black boy, if the officer pulls them over and says, I need to see your wallet, and if he says, okay, I'm reaching for my wallet, there's a fear that's activated in a police officer sometimes based on the systemic racism we have. And that's not common even on that individual officer as much as the sort of institutionalized racism that we live in our country, where this fear center is activated. And when the fear center is activated, we can't think with rational thought. And so to reduce a fear center response, we have to teach our young black boys to put your wallet where they can see it. So when they ask for your wallet, they know, this is my wallet right here. I'm not reaching for a gun. This is my wallet right here. And so I, as a white person, have never, and my dad's here, my mom, I think was in here at one point, and I think they raised me wonderfully and to be a pretty mindful person. But I was privileged as a white person. I didn't have to think about that. I still don't really have to think about that. I've been pulled over and I haven't had my license. And they said, well, just give me your name, I'll pull it up. And they let me carry on. My guess is that's not Lauren's experience with the police. That they're not quite as like, oh, great, upstanding citizen, have a good day. You know? And the reality is Lauren's probably more upstanding than I am, if we're going to be totally truthful. So I'm going to show you this video, and it talks about those sort of conversations with the police. And it's not that Lauren or I want to set up for our children like, oh, this is really hard work. This isn't something we're telling them. This is something they're seeing. It's something they're experiencing because of the way that children categorize the world, because they observe constantly. So they see when there's a black person and there's a white person, and the white person fear center gets activated, and they kind of take a step away, or they hold their purse closer, or they just don't want to get close, or they answer in a short way. If somebody says, hey, could you help me find where Walgreens is? And if I'm scared of the person because they're a different color skin than I am, and I'm sort of like, oh yeah, it's that way, good luck. Kids see that compared to if a white person comes up and I'm like, oh yeah, it's this way, oh yeah, are you from around here? Oh yeah, blah, 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 blah. They're taking note of how we interact with people who look different from us, whether that's different in gender, whether that's disabilities, whether that's different in age, whether that's different in race. That's how kids learn, through observing and categorizing. So I'm going to show you this video. I'm trying not to play both of them at the same time. I'm missing my tech-savvy other half.
We actually have a line that we do at our house. We practice this thing. What is it?
I'm Ariel Sky Williams. I'm 8 years old. I'm unarmed and I have nothing that will hurt you.
It's just kind of a thing we practice at our house.
Back to 9 on your side at 7. Question for you. Have you seen this ad from Procter &
There are
Gamble?
great police officers out there.
And it
There's
is
also
generating
some
a
police
lot of
officers
discussion
who are
on
not so
social
good.
media.
And my fear is that you run across that those bathrooms.
I was like, I hear two things.
People of color have always been targeted by the police.
Before they became a policeman, they were a person. And that person took all their ideas and all their thoughts and all their prejudice into their job.
Why would a police officer assume that you did something bad? Maybe because of my skin color.
I remember being put in handcuffs for something that had nothing to do with me. I was literally walking in the mall. Cops slammed me on the ground, busted my lip, chipped my tooth. It actually made me really mad.
How about the time they pulled us over with me in the car and arrested me and left all of you guys sitting in the car and nobody knew how to drive on the side of the road because the bumper on the car was kind of hanging off. You know, we live in Puyallup. There's people that don't even have a bumper on their car.
My rear brake light wasn't working, and I got to my destination and they were working.
I was about your age, actually. They grabbed me.
Why?
I didn't know at the time. They just grabbed me. They threw me onto the police car.
I got tased that time. That time they tased me because they said I wasn't complying.
Ariel, are you okay?
What's wrong with me? I'm okay, I'm alive, all right? Every day I get to see you, I get to do this, right? All right, come on, let's calm down, let's finish this, all right? You good? Hey, you're making me cry.
You have to be careful when you're out there in this world because this world's not gonna always be honest or fair to you. I know, Sean, you got a little bit lighter than the rest of them, so it's a possibility you won't get stopped.
It's not like you just pulled him over.
If you're driving, cop pulls you over.
Police gets out the car, comes to the window. What would you do?
License and registration, please, ma'am.
Why do you think I pulled you over?
I don't know, tell me.
When a police officer says something you don't, you're black. You can't be looking at them saying, oh, I don't know, why don't you tell me?
Well,
that right there is giving them the license to pull you out of your car and physically harm you because it will be done.
Don't get upset, don't get sassy. Why did you pull me over? You don't have, I know how, just follow instructions and stay calm.
Okay.
Do you think just being a police officer and pulling you over, regardless of if you feel you've done something or not, they should get your respect?
That's a tricky question.
The answer is yes.
Yes. You gotta go to your wallet to get your ID. Can I go reach in my back pocket to get my ID out? You could do what I do, and I show them my hands. So when they're walking up, they see I don't have anything in my hands.
I'm Ariel Sky Williams, and I have nothing that will harm you or hurt you.
And what's the next place you put your hands when you're driving? Or on the steering wheel? Put your hands out.
If at all possible, turn your phone on.
And call someone and put it on speaker.
But whatever you're doing, I want you to say what you're doing before you do it.
You don't write any statements.
Well, you have to write a statement.
You don't have to write anything. You're a minor. I'm responsible for you. No one can tell you anything else.
If it tells you to be quiet, be quiet. Do everything that you can to get back to me. I see it weighing on you, and I don't want it to weigh on you. I'm just worried about Donovan. I'm worried about him now.
Are you guys talking about?
My nephew and her cousin. I don't want him to be shot. I don't want him to go to jail.
You guys, if you could say anything to police, what would you say?
Learn about people, learn about their problems.
Take some diversity training. I mean, it should be like at this point, like a monthly requirement.
You know, there's really nothing at this point that they could do that would make me feel any safer with them without them just point blank clearing them all out and starting all over from scratch.
So don't always assume that all of them are bad.
What all you see on the news and in newspapers, and it keeps happening. It's just in a different way. It's like how people are like, you should forgive so-and-so, but they keep doing it to me. I forgave them, but they keep doing it to me. It gets harder and harder to forgive them.
So that's a hard video still for us to watch, and I know for me as a white person, it's really easy for me to sit with that and to start like rejecting it or start to feel so much white guilt that I'm like, oh, this is bad, and that's hard for me to experience. So I'm just going to compartmentalize it and go over here. And what we're here to do is encourage us to not do that because it doesn't make the problem go away. This is the reality in our country. And there are 2 books here that I have that are great reads. I have information on them as well, and I'll set them over there if you want to take a look or write it down. I have paper and pen. This one is called Tears We Cannot Stop, A Sermon to White America. I don't know if anybody's heard of this, but it's written by, I believe he's Baptist. It's written by a minister. And this one is Systemic Racism, A Theory of Oppression. And this is one of my go-to sociological books that is a great resource. If you want to learn more about the institutionalization of racism or the systemic nature of it, those are great resources. And I know that our church is filled with really academic people who I think would love that and love learning about it in this brief amount of time. We just wanted to give you our hearts of our experience with this. So stop compartmentalizing it, all of us who do. And Lauren, tell me what your response is to that video.
Well, the first time I seen it, it made me cry because it was just like such an eye-opener that is the reality for all black children. It doesn't matter if it's a girl or a boy. And that's what we saw in the video. Like they were even explaining that to their daughters. Like this is what you need to do. And for me, it was especially tough because I don't want my kids to grow up thinking like to fear the police or the police are bad, because they're supposed to be there to help. These are the people you're supposed to call in an emergency or when something bad is happening, and not, thinking, oh, if I call them, like my life is in danger now, even more so. And so in our house, it's just, it's a tough conversation. I've even, me and my mother, I've had several conversations about my 7-year-old and him wearing hoodies. And that's like his absolute favorite go-to item of clothing. And I'm like, Mom, it's
So
okay.
Lauren's referring to like the hoods.
Yeah, flipped up. And that's his go-to. He loves them. And I'm like, Mom, it's okay. He's only 7. And she's just like, no. She like was on the verge of tears. She's like, please don't let him do that. And if he's wearing them, tell him don't put them on over his head. She said, because they'll swear that he was 7 feet tall and a danger and coming after. And I'm like, but Mom, he's 7. But I had to really like think about that and put it in perspective. And I'm like, she's absolutely right. Even at school, that's all he wants to wear. And I'm like, no, you can't. You can't. Like, it's not a matter of, you being an individual and expressing yourself and wearing what you want. You can't. These days and times, you can't be yourself, especially for a black child. Because no matter what, if the baggy jeans, logos on a shirt, you're going to automatically get classified within a certain group, even if you're not that kind of person. So even for me, as a black woman, I feel like I always have to be aware as to how I am conveying myself, presenting myself, the type of language I use, because it's just automatic. You're going to get classified as being a certain type of person. And even with the preschool that our kids attended, I was always aware in the morning of what was I putting on going to school, because I know sweatpants and just whatever kind of tennis shoes, hair, but no, that was not going to be acceptable there, because they're already judging me, because I am a single parent, and so they're like, oh, here she comes with her 2 kids by herself, which is probably one of the many reasons I chose after my divorce to keep my husband's last name, just because I didn't want my kids to have a different last name than me, because I knew we're already being judged, because here I am by myself with these 2 little boys, and then on top of it, we've all got a different last name. I must have not have been married, and these must have just been my offspring from some random guy, and that's not the case. That's not my story.
Thank you, Lauren, for sharing that. That is, again, such an issue of privilege. Well, I'm self-conscious about going into the same preschool with sweatpants on, because I think that they think I'm like slumming around and don't work and whatever. It's not connected to my worth or my sense of being or who I am as a person. And that's the privilege I have of being a white person. I don't have to constantly think about that. One of the areas of guilt that I have is that I'm so passionate about this topic and I'm a white person. And I think, well, who am I to tell this story? Who am I to tell this story? And my therapist says, you're an advocate. And that's a good thing to be. And I think, as something Lauren and I have talked about before, Lauren could get up in front of a group of people and there would oftentimes be, again, a sort of amygdala response that's happening where people become concerned with their own guilt or the hard feelings that they're having, and it becomes easy to place judgment on Lauren. You may be placing judgment on me right now, and that's okay. You're free to do that, but my experience is that when I talk about race with a group of predominantly white people, though not all white, it's far less scary for them because I'm white. That's not Lauren's experience, standing up talking to a group or a room full of predominantly white people. So as we end today, I want to give us one tidbit of hope and encouragement for change. One is to continue having the conversation. So if we had 3 hours to be together, there's a lot we would have shared and done. But we don't have that time. I gotta get to church. But we have a bunch of questions for your consideration, and I'm gonna put them over on that table for you guys. But they're questions like, how comfortable are you talking about race and privilege with people the same skin color as you? What contributes to that comfort level? How comfortable are you talking about race and privilege with people of a different skin color from you? Because it's very different sometimes. In what ways are you privileged? As you reflect back on your life, what experiences have shaped your perspective or beliefs about people of color? And these are questions that aren't like a one-time pop. I think they're questions that are important to continue asking ourselves without judgment of ourselves. Without judgment of ourselves. Because we only know, just like our children are learning, we only know what we were exposed to as children, what we were around, what we were involved in. So there isn't intended to be a judgment here. I am not arrived or woke. I try to be, but I will have a lifetime of trying to understand more fully. And so this isn't something that we like, just like in our faith walk, in a spiritual journey. We don't just get there. We don't show up and think, okay, now I get it. Now Jesus and I are great, good, I'm on the expressway to heaven. It's not like that. It's a practice. We continue to engage it, and we continue to grow. And so I hope that the questions will be helpful for you guys to talk about with friends, to just reflect on as yourself. Another thing that we have for you is a book list, which I have copies of, although I did not print copies for everybody, because truthfully it's easier to email since there are links with each one. This is a 4-page list of diverse books for children. So one of the things I would urge and encourage you guys to do as you look in our church and as you look in homes that you're in that have young children or schools that you're in, is to take a look at the books and see what the people look like, so that we're not having an Elijah experience with that game of all white people. Because I know for me, when I look at a lot of our books here at CPC, it's mostly white people in the stories. So for children who aren't, it creates that otherness, that I'm non-white, I'm other, I'm lesser. So one of the easy things we can do for children in regards to race and privilege is to diversify our books. They don't even have to be books about diversity, just to make sure that our books are representing different races, ethnicities, and different types of people. We rarely see people with disabilities in books, which is another area I'm passionate about. So I will set those over there, and if you'd like me to email you the list, we can do that. And then can somebody who has a watch tell me the time? 10 till, okay. So I'm going to take 2 minutes to read this, and then I will close this in prayer. Can you hold my mic while I read? So I've written two children's books, and this one actually was just published this week because I had to vet it with Lauren. Because it's a hard thing, just like the video we watched. I don't want children to feel like they are lesser because of the color of their skin. But what this book does is tell the story that children in our country are experiencing today, who are children of color. It is not a book that I hope we will have to use 50 years from now, though I think we might still. But my hope is that at some point, this book is pulled off the shelves because it's not relevant anymore. But right now, it's really relevant. So you're not going to be able to see the pictures, but I'll read you the story. It's called Love Wins. The rock in the water does not know the pain of the rock in the sun. It's a Haitian proverb. There were some kids who sat upon the same earth side by side. Some were in the water, others on hot land nearby. Life was pretty comfortable for the kids playing in the water. The sun would shine on them, but never would they get hotter. Life wasn't quite as easy for the kids out in the sun. The sun's hot rays were exhausting by the time the day was done. The kids within the water were as comfortable as can be. They simply did not think about the kids out in the heat. The kids on the land watched those in the water every day. With heavy hearts they wondered why they weren't allowed to play. The kids in the heat simply wanted to be seen, heard, and known, but the other kids ignored them, leaving them all alone. It was only when they stopped to look that the kids in the water did see, the kids standing on hot land, whose lives were not as easy. With an act of awareness and love, a kid from the water extended her hand. It was a powerful gesture filled with hope, one through which healing began. It is love that wins in the end. If we open our hearts, we can be children playing side by side in a world filled with hope and peace. Let me close us in prayer. God, thank you so much for this opportunity, for the privilege of being able to be up here, for the access to education that I've had and the access to friends like Lauren that I've had. Thank you for the ways that you continue to grow me. God, I pray for our city and for our world, that we could more fully move toward who it is you created us to be. That all of those biases, all of those fears that we have and are passed on from generation to generation to generation, that you would continue to turn us toward a different trajectory, God. That you would continue your work of healing in our country and in our lives. That every person in this room would know their worth because they are yours. That every child in this country and in this world and in this church would know their worth because they are yours. I pray that we would have the courage to enter into really tough conversations, to make tough changes in our lives, and to never stop being self-reflective, including Lauren and me, God, that we would continue to have these conversations. Thank you for your love. Thank you that you not only love all of us, God, but you love each of us. It's in your name we pray. Amen.